Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today I'm super excited because I have another amazing guest for you. So my guest today is a broadcaster and author dedicated to creating space for authentic Muslim narratives. After a successful print and broadcasting career spanning 25 years, she dedicates her skills to produce and present online content focused on social issues and historical narratives from a faith perspective. In 2019, her play, Accidentally Muslim, toured the world's largest art festival, the Edinburgh Fringe, to fantastic reviews. A social media presence across all platforms, she's invited to present talks, lectures for institutions, for podcasts, i.e. me, and TV channels across the world. Her bespoke training sessions on speaking with confidence have been delivered in multiple cities. In Search of a Holy Land, her memoir is now available in both Turkish and English. So a very, very, very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Lauren Booth. How are you, Lauren?
Alhamdulillah, which means all praise to God. No, I'm good. Thank you so much. And it's good to see you with your background. And thanks for agreeing to do a video podcast. I know normally you do sound, right?
Well, yeah, I kind of, that was like I was talking to a friend yesterday, actually, just for a bit of advice. And he was like, why is it taking you so long to get into the rhythm of exploring video? And I kind of like, it was almost like easier, as it was an easier play for me to kind of do audio. The idea of being in front of the camera and talking and the visual aspect, I definitely felt some level of discomfort around that. So I took the easy route, which was just to do a nice audio conversation. But the nice audio conversation doesn't go away, still exists, but now we get to see me and the amazing guest, i.e. Lauren. So yeah, so I'm excited to have this conversation with you, though.
Me too. Post-production isn't fun, it's a bit more editing as well, but we'll get there, inshallah. Yeah. It's all new skills, right? It's all new skills.
Yeah, well, yeah, totally. And obviously your background is media, broadcast, so you know everything that goes on behind the scenes, how to maybe make those subtle changes just to make it on point. I've kind of already had a glimpse into that into our prep. So it's nice to kind of get a little bit, some insights that I can maybe I can use for me and myself in the future. My Perfect Failure, I think there's a nice synergy between my journey, but also your journey, and also what you're not just done for yourself, but also what you're doing for other people around the world with giving people a perspective into Islam, which a lot of us don't have. But what I was keen to do initially is to capture a bit of your background, because obviously people will glean, like me, you've got a lovely English accent. So where did it all begin for you?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So I'm a child of the 70s, Paul, and that means that I grew up in Hampstead Garden suburb, which meant that everybody around us seemed to be creative. And what does creative mean in the terms of 1970s parents? It kind of means that they went out in 1967 and never came home. Right? They were always just on one big party. And all of the kids that I knew around me had fascinating parents who really shouldn't have been parents. Okay, so yes, they were actors, models, and poets, and they were doing this amazing stuff, darling. And the kids were sort of like free range. Let's call it nicely, free range. Yeah. Now we'd probably be taken into care, and I don't think that's a good option, by the way. I am not critiquing the parents here. I'm just saying it was a very kind of wild seem to have been born into. And I'm really grateful for that, by the grace of Allah, because it gives you a very different outlook on normality and what needs are. And you're kind of self-sufficient a bit younger. So my dad was the well-known actor Anthony Booth, and he really was creative in that way of nothing normal could happen in a day, right? He wasn't interested in, let's sit down to dinner, dear. Let's talk about how your day was at school. It was like his mind was like, in the 1700s, and this was happening, and then Shakespeare came, and this happened, and it was amazing, and it was amazing. And then we'd go walking over the heath, and he'd tell these incredible stories. And then my mum had been a model who'd gone out with Ringo Starr, and she had these amazing stories from the south of France and the Racquet Club. But reality does come into family life. And so it was very messy. It was a very messy situation. But you know what? I'll tell you, subhanallah, I use a lot of these Arabic words. Sorry, it's like it's you remember to say them all the time when you say something all the time. Yeah. So I hope your listeners won't mind. I'll explain them. Subhanallah, all praise and power and magnificence to Allah Ta'ala. Subhanallah. So that's what we say as we go along, pretty much. Alhamdulillah. So yeah, they weren't really kind of normal parents, and that had its upside and its downside. But I far prefer to look at it as a creative background.
Yeah, it's interesting that your parents obviously have this creative, and I say you're a child of the 70s like me, and they came from the 60s, which was more of an interesting period where it was maybe more free-spirited. So you had this creative stuff going on. It almost feels like that was part of part of your exposure as a child. But then obviously there's a real life element that has to come in play, and I guess how they collide, and that will impact you to a degree at some point.
Well, I'm also the child of a child of alcoholic parents. Okay. So, we can. Some of my memories are like my parents getting me out of bed at 3 a.m. when I was 5 years old to dance in front of hippies to kind of classical music. Not entirely normal, but at the same time, I've always been able to flip it. Alhamdulillah, that's thanks be to God, right? I've always been able to flip it because my dad also believed in transcendental meditation. And he believed very strongly that, and he would tell me as a child, this world isn't the be all and end all. This is just material stuff. And the reality of existence and the beauty and the importance of it is beyond the seen realm. Can you imagine now speaking to children in this way? People of faith, we do actually, but in this age of materialism, imagine giving a child the tools to try to go to the ends of the universe, to try and fly and be free of their body. It means that you have this incredible capacity for imagination and hopefulness. And that for me, I always sought God. My mum, when I came to Islam, which was much, much later, I remember she called me and she said, "Oh, the family have been asking why you've become an extremist in religion." And I said, "Okay, what did you say?" And she said, "I told them the truth, that you were always a weird kid." And what did she mean by weird? She meant that I always used to pray. So 4, 5, 6, my earliest memories of being on my bed, dear God, please give me normal parents, because all you want is normality. You don't perhaps see the inspiration until much, much later.
Yeah. Definitely you had an interesting childhood. So acting, so you mentioned your dad was an actor, you got into acting. Was that inevitable?
You know what? I think it's inevitable if you set foot on a stage as a child, because if you go into a beautiful theatre, I think my dad was touring with Theatre Clwyd, and he took me onto the stage, and all the seats are empty and it's absolutely silent, and you can smell the wood which has been buffed that day, and the lights come on and you're like, oh, what is this? and you just want to speak. You don't know what you're going to say, but you just want to speak, and you want to speak well, and you want to speak with feeling. And that is completely, joyfully, incredibly addictive.
Yeah. So that's interesting to me because, and I'm kind of jealous in a way, because I love actresses, actors. You know, I guess everybody's an actor, whether you're a male or female. And
thank you for that. My dad, I could hear my dad then saying, "There's no such thing as actresses. There's only actors."
Yeah. So I realised that I misspoke. So I just wanted to clarify that. But so the idea of going onto a stage in front of people, you know, working out what I'm going to say, projecting it, that would definitely fill me with fear. So when you said a second ago about the excitement you got and having the opportunity to talk and to convey something, I'm thinking, wow.
I can help you with that. Let's talk
Really?
after this.
Really?
I can definitely help you. I've got a couple of tips in mind.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
you'll
lovely,
get
lovely,
there. You're
lovely.
halfway there. You're 90% there.
Okay, lovely.
We can do this. Yeah.
Okay.
I get what you're saying about that nervousness, and that just was never there. It was, you know, and I just think about how we bring up our children. And how, I mean, my father would sit me down and he'd read Shakespeare, and I'd be reading The Guardian at the age of 5.
Wow.
And how do you pronounce things, and how do you say things, and, you know, slow it down. And I taught my kids that.
So,
you know,
so when you were pronouncing things, was he interjecting and saying,
emphasize this? No, you've missed it. You've got to pause there. Hang on. And I'd just be reading The Guardian. I'd be swinging my legs on the end of the bed. Today in Parliament, that, no, come on, what happened? Give it some welly, you know.
I love that. So acting, that was obviously something that came to you naturally, but you got into the broadcasting space. Was that sort of something that felt organic, or did that just happen?
Interesting. Let's just stay on acting for a second, because as far as a person's spiritual journey goes, I heard drama school described as show-off school, and that's literally what it is. It is a place where it's incredibly creative as well. You do get to understand the human condition, and you do get inside the hearts and minds of other characters. So you should come out more able to analyze your feelings. If you wanted to talk a bit further about that, I'm happy to, because it can make you a little bit strange, but that's something to do with psychology. But yeah, it's show-off school. You're always measuring yourself against somebody else, because 90% of actors are always unemployed at any one time. So you are joining an extremely limited profession. And goodness knows now, with the strikes and with after post-COVID and all of that and all the shutdowns, and I was never thin enough. I was never, and I was skinny. So don't take me now. When I was 20, I was like that, but you're never quite enough. I mean, imagine you spend your days going into rooms and you're like, hi, next. All of that is absolutely true. And also all of that as well, Paul, about sexual harassment. I once did an interview with Michael Winner, and I should have known something was up when he asked me to his house. And he said, my dear, come upstairs. And he sat in his chair, and it was a big Kensington double fronted windowed room. And he said to me, just go and give me a twirl by that window, right? And I thought, why does he want me to turn around by the window? And it was only when I went downstairs on the way out, I thought he could see through my skirt. He was looking at my legs, because my legs mattered. He was not in the least bit interested about, is she going to speak well? And so that started to get really tiresome really quickly.
Yeah. Particularly when you're aware of it. Unfortunately, some people may have not been quite aware of what was going on. They may have not had that perception to realize what was going on. So clearly, you becoming aware of it, that kind of reduced your sort of enthusiasm for the profession. You've got a scarcity of work because of the competition, and then you've got to deal with directors or people of influence that are really got alternative agendas.
Listen, you know what? People who go into acting are often hugely creative, very wise and intelligent. Often this thing about vanity, it brings out our vanity. But if you're going to stay the course, it's not vanity that's going to get you there. So why do all the actors always want to be directors? Because they want to get behind the camera, because they're like, this kind of showing off bit, this bit's easy. Let's get behind the camera and do the technical stuff. No, I sounded a bit down on acting then. Acting is very technical and it's a beautiful craft. But at some point, if you want to go further, you have to move on. So I wasn't a very successful actor. Hollywood did not come knocking. And so at 27, I thought, I found myself sitting in my home thinking, please, phone ring for one line on EastEnders. And it'd be like one line, or even in the background. Yeah, let's be in the background of a soap opera. I'll get noticed then. And a part of me was going, you can't spend your life like this. This is not, you actually have other interests. And my dad had given me some really good advice, and I'm going to pass this on to everyone as well, that acting and indeed the arts are a vocation, not a vacation. He used to say that this is as important, art is as important to society as nursing, as the health of the nation. It is the mental and spiritual health of the nation, in his opinion. I'm a person of faith, so I come from somewhere slightly different, but I get that the beauty of understanding the human condition is very important. So he said, if you're not into it, if you're not willing to starve in a garret, get out and let the woman behind you have a go. Okay. So I was really getting out of everyone's way by leaving acting.
And when he said that to you, that was almost like it meant something. You could think, actually, well, I don't need to do that. I don't want to do that. There's other things that I can do and get maybe more satisfaction from, maybe. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. I mean, and a lot of this life is about retraining. Don't be afraid of retraining, right? I remember reading several years ago that it's normal now, not for somebody to have 5 jobs in their life, but 5 different careers.
Yeah.
So you're going to go zig, zag. Oh, that'll do. And I'm going to end up with this thing that will be the building that will build on everything I've done so far. But might be miles from where you started.
Yeah. And I love that. I love that analogy, because I definitely feel that there are people that get marooned into a situation. You might be doing it 15 years or maybe a bit more. And then it's like, well, if this feels like really uncomfortable, but the idea of retraining or really going towards that thing that I've always wanted to do just feels a little bit of a challenge. So I love that your analogy that actually you can zigzag, we can retrain. Your testament to that.
Paul, what you've touched upon there is really interesting, because what keeps us being stuck sometimes is pride and shame.
Yeah.
It's good money after bad. I've put so much into this, I can't leave it now, even if it's going to be mediocre or bad. And the shame of, I haven't made it, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So to leave now is like, oh, everyone's going to be laughing. Don't worry this invisible everyone is.
Yeah.
That, the invisible crowd, ignore them.
Yeah. 100%. And I guess we'll touch upon this in a second with your journey to Islam, where obviously you've got family and friends that may have had a different opinion. You mentioned your mum, and I think definitely we spend far too much time and energy focusing on other people's opinion who may not have the courage or the conviction to actually do what they really want to do. And sometimes when they critique us, it's maybe there's a little bit of envy there because they have something that they want to do and they're seeing somebody else make those moves and transition in, and they just don't know how to, or maybe they don't have the equipment. They do, but it's actually, to your point, it's ignoring other people and just getting on with it.
Yeah, my nan was actually helpful in that. When I was at drama school, she said, you should learn to type. And this is how long ago it was. Why do I need to type? Darling, I am an actor. I am a creative. Creatives don't type. I'm not going to sit in a typing pool. And she really pushed me, just do your typing. Just
Yeah.
get your, who knew that we'd be glued to keyboards 30 years later?
Yeah,
Thank God that I learnt to type. And then I went to evening school in central London, and I did journalism.
Okay.
And I was told by the teacher, the professor, to leave after 3 sessions. She said, I've got nothing to teach you. And I thought, I'm that bad? She said, no, literally, you've got connections and your writing is great. You don't need this.
Yeah.
You really don't. And I thought that was the fairest thing I'd ever heard. I thought, wow, sometimes, by the grace of God, you get a little push in a direction, just go for it, just fly.
Yeah. And so journalism, that obviously became something that you excelled at and did. You worked for Sky, BBC, you worked for publishers as well. So that was something that you thought, yes, let's embrace this.
Oh man, when I first started writing, it was every bit as joyful as being on stage in a different way. That feeling of the words just coming out of you. Once you get over the fear of the blank page, that's a horrible feeling. You never stop struggling with I feel sick. I'm going to just clean the floor for a bit. And then it comes, and then you're doing it. And then when you finish and you press send, it is like, oh, great, this is good.
I'm envious again. I've been envious. You said a few things. Envy is not a great quality. I'm just being honest. The ability to kind of sit down and compose, and because I've got friends that I guess I would say authors. They haven't published anything yet, but they're on that journey. They have those moments of, I guess, deep frustration, but they're certainly strides beyond me, because I definitely admire anybody that has the intention to put something on paper and get it out as a book or as blogs or whatever it may be, but to actually go through the process and publish a book. I think, wow, we're going to get into your book in a second. So you had journalism, broadcasters, you worked for establishments in the UK, and then...
And I just want to be clear here. I did slots, like newspaper reviews and bits and bobs and interviews at the BBC and Sky. But my main work was, the Evening Standard, Men's Health, the New Statesman, the Daily Mail, the Mail on Sunday. So yeah, I was a columnist. So I just wanted to clarify.
Well, that's lovely as well, because you get to kind of like dabble in all these different areas of publications, and some have different narratives, and you get to, I guess, cater to different audiences based on whatever their narrative is.
I was just thinking then that actually it's really interesting, because a columnist is kind of like, once you've got a photo byline, it's a bit like being a Hollywood star.
Yeah.
People know you, and that vanity still creeps in. And I don't know what it's like now with the comments underneath, because there weren't comments. There was like the odd letter after 3 weeks, which didn't have the same impact as "you're rubbish" or "I love this," or so it's kind of, all of that style of creativity can become detrimental, in that you're always saying what you think and what you feel, and what is the driving force behind it. So I wrote what I believed in, and that was really important, and that was my driving force, because otherwise I wouldn't have worked for the right wing newspapers that I did. I was like a conduit for Middle England hatred for about a decade.
I like that. So you could I love that. So you could write for a right-wing publication, but you could be honest. You'd write from your own perspective and not water it down to suit people's egos.
But there were, but it's there are places it's horrible to write for, and the Daily Mail, they would take a piece from me and they'd rip the guts and bones out of it until it was basically my name on something that they'd written. And that is the least satisfying version of writing. And you'd just literally be doing it for like, wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
At the end of the month, you do one of those and you'd be like, well, that's me sorted, but there's no kind of pleasure in it. And so my journey took a different turn when I started meeting Muslims, and after 9/11 actually. And I thought, what is going on? Why is it these poor countries being bombed? Why are 1 million people displaced? Why are hundreds of thousands dying? And it really revitalized my interest in other people rather than just myself.
Yeah. And I think it's particularly in Western culture, there is everybody's me, me, me. We don't really think about our fellow neighbor, so to speak. I think some people do, but I think that what underpins the culture is me, and it's not really our neighbor. Some people might have a different vantage point on that, but I'm not saying it as a blanket statement. I think there's a general theme around that. I was, before researching you, I was listening to, I think you were interviewed by someone, I forget who, but you talk about when you, I'm not sure where you've gone. I think you've gone somewhere. Forgive me, I forget exactly where it is, but hopefully you'll recognise what I'm the events that I'm referring to. But you went somewhere and you I guess were given access to Islam. You had conversations, but it just felt right for you. It just felt emotionally, you felt engaged with it. And I think you referenced something like it was almost my hand on my back, gently nudging me towards something that felt really organic for you. So maybe you could expand on that. I think I've butchered it a little bit, but maybe hopefully you recognize what I'm referring to.
So I'd been this child, as I said, who always prayed, the weird kid in the family. And then, of course, in the teenage years, in come the ego and the hormones. And so having come from a kind of an addictive background, I was smoking drugs on the way to school at the age of 14. And, that was just, the next 30 years were pretty much, that was part of life, unfortunately. And how do you then get back to a spiritual place? Well, I think for women giving birth, that moment of giving birth, there's a reason why in Islam and other faiths that women who die in childbirth are buried as warriors. They're considered as martyrs and the highest of heaven, because that is you have to draw on every ounce of who you are, what you are, and you cry to God. And then there's a baby that you didn't really make, and you hold that child, and it really is a potentially very spiritual moment. So I kind of went back to Christianity after my children were born and started taking them to church, because I really wanted to be a part of shaping human beings, not shaping successful robots to feed into the machinery of materialism. You're going to be a success and you're going to buy this and you're going to do that. And at the time, you see, we were living in the south of France, and we had a swimming pool, and the kids went horse riding and piano and everything I'd never done. And they knew the difference between like brie and camembert. I remember my 4-year-old, when she was Alex, when she was 4, we were at a French restaurant in the south of France. She went, "Oh, mummy, they've given us camembert and they've said it's brie. This is terrible." I thought, who are these people? If these were other people's kids, I'd be going, "Oh God, what brats."
Yeah.
And so you really get aware that you have little souls that you're shaping. So we started going back to church. Didn't really find it there. Good people, nice people, trying their best, but the message of the Trinity, it just didn't make sense. Yeah. And so then entirely by the grace of God, I found myself in Palestine to do a story. And the Muslims that I was meeting not only looked after the holy places of Christianity, so that's a fact. In Jerusalem, it's a Muslim family who have the keys to the Holy Sepulchre and have had for 1100 years, because that's their family's duty. And they knew more about Christ, and they knew more about Mary, Mother of Christ. And I thought, and their patience and their kindness and generosity. I thought they were aliens. I literally thought these people have come on alien ships to the earth. Why aren't people talking about this? Remember, I was kind of a hard-bitten journalist at the time, and they just blew me away in a beautiful way, and it just changed my whole outlook. I thought, I don't know what my faith is. I don't know what it means to be a good person, because these people are doing it and I'm not. And I don't really know the direction in my life now. What am I going to do?
That sounds incredibly transformative in terms of what you were hearing from the people that you were meeting. So when you had that experience, did you feel that a shift and something would or was changing within you?
You know what, that whole last statement was also incredibly selfish, and that's not how I felt at the time. It is a reflection. At the time, what I felt and what I still feel is, my God, these people are living under apartheid. And why is nobody saying anything? Why are we being told the opposite sort of stories? I'm being told to be afraid of these ragamuffin Arabs with their stones, and they're nothing but kind when you go there. Okay. What's happening? And I had to get on board with, I need to do something. I need to do something. I can't live in a world where this happens. And that was transformative. That caring for others more than yourself, as a person who'd been to show off school and then had some fame, would go to the opening of a plastic bag if it meant there were freebies. You know, the person drinking the champagne while she was pregnant, and you know, that person was going, these are real people and this is a real situation. And if you have any reason, if you have any power in your hand, you better do something for this. You better react to this in the correct way, or you're not a human being.
Yeah. If possibly the same interview or another interview you did, I heard you reference something like there was a lady that had nothing. I don't think she was eating. And no, so she was fasting. Sorry, she was fasting. And you asked, I think you fasting, you want to eat. And she was like, well, I fast because I think of the people that have nothing. I think she said something along those lines to you. And I think you compared it to yourself and the life that we all have, particularly in the West, where if we miss the slightest thing that happens and our mood is exasperated for maybe the day, and it really contrasts to people that are definitely they're more in tune with the happiness and the plight of our neighbours.
I'm just typing there the two words, gratitude versus entitlement. We are the most entitled generation of utter brats that this world has ever known. And we have to get our heads around that. There has never, you know, when I was growing up in our, I was going to say a rude word there, rubbish flat in North London, okay, with the windows that had fallen out and they had cardboard over them and a sink that was all moldy and freezing cold. We used to sleep in our coats. And I look at the lovely place that I now live in. Some may consider it simple, to others to me then, I live in a palace. You live in a palace. We have running water, hot and cold. We have a place to keep things frozen. And you know, I remember when I was 17 and I used to go around to my older sister's house, and she was a lawyer, and she had a big fridge full of things. And I thought, one day I want a big fridge full of things, you know, because I was living on Rice Krispies. Yeah. And now I have a big fridge full of things. So I think learning gratitude and learning enough is enough. And when you have enough, you better share. And sharing, altruism, is its own reward. SubhanAllah. That's what people of faith, that's what faith gives us. It gives us a uniformity, an understanding that I can be content. And if I'm content, I must be grateful. and a direction of gratitude towards God. And then our gratitude is expressed how? By giving to others of our time, of our wealth, what we can do. Really, I think our time, go and seeing that person, sitting down with that person, going to hospital and visiting people who are sick, visiting granny. These are important things that make us human.
Yeah. And that unfortunately is largely forgotten particularly in a Western culture, what I alluded to earlier, where there is definitely more of an emphasis on us as individuals and us getting what we can, having as much as we can, keeping as much as we can, growing that. And we don't really think about, our family and I think some people do, but I think that there is definitely more of an insular approach, I think, in Western society, with social media and all these things that really don't really foster much appreciation or thoughts. Some of the things that you just said around gratitude and entitlement is rife. It's probably as rife as it has been. Possibly it's going to get worse. Because...
what was interesting was, I remember the first time I was in a checkpoint in the West Bank, and people were just trying to go to work, and they were held 6 or 7 hours like cattle in a grid, in a metal grid, with guns pointed at them in the most horrific way, without water or toilet facilities. And then I thought, I compared it to us standing at a coffee shop, like, or if I'm getting a bit older now, so I'm a little bit slow with getting the change out, and God forbid you use cash now. Oh God, can you just tap and go? And you'd have to sit there. And I remember once I was at a checkpoint in Nablus, and it's a really vicious one. They're all horrible, but some of them really have a bad reputation amongst the Palestinians. I don't know if that's the same now. It's probably worse. And I was in a taxi, and we were in like an hour's worth of traffic to be searched. And the driver said, "Oh, I've just realized you're British. With your British passport, we can go to the front of the queue." And I said, "But you're Palestinian. Why should I, as a stranger, jump the queue in front of your people? I'll stay here. Let's just wait it out." And after a few minutes, I looked, and he was crying. He said, just the fact you'd want to sit in the queue with us and not take that entitlement. Not be entitled to that was really moving.
That's interesting as well. It's almost his ideology had been, I guess, brainwashed to think that there are people that are more entitled, that warrant that.
I don't think he thought that there are people who warrant it, but that's the way it works. We're just in this situation, and obviously you're going to take it. Why not take it? And so digging deep to have some ethics, and that being content, that's really, really important.
Yeah, totally. So your book, In Search of a Holy Land, tell me about where the idea to create a book came from, and maybe you can give myself and people listening a bit of the narrative around the book. And obviously when we will put links and so forth, so people will be able to get the book and so forth, but it'd be lovely to capture where the book came from.
So the first 2 chapters of that book were written when I was 19 years old.
Really?
Yeah. And it would have been absolutely classed as misery literature, misery lit. And then if you remember in the 90s, everyone who'd ever had anything go wrong in their childhood was spewing it out, and, "Oh, this happened to me." And there weren't even any lessons in it. It was just like, "Oh God, that was horrible." It was like watching a car crash, and you'd read through it going, "Oh God," and then they were abused, and then they were stolen, and then they got hit, and then they were... And so I wrote like that. And it was horrible, self-pitying, self-righteous, vengeful, mean, petty, and I had to get it out. And I'm kind of against this idea, Paul, that everybody has a book in them. I don't think we all have books in us. I don't think so. I think we have diaries in us. I think we have reflections, but I think we need to know the point when we're just regurgitating stuff that we find interesting. And that, for the first 20 years, that's what I'd done. I'd written these 2 chapters, which were all about how rubbish my parents were and how hard it was in the 70s. And I'm glad nobody read it. But what I did do subsequently was I kept diaries all through the next 20 years until it came to a point where I was standing in America. I'd just come to Islam, and I was recounting some of the adventures that I'd had, some genuinely interesting things that God only knows why he allowed them to happen. To me, it's a grace and a test, but they were genuinely adventurous things, whether it's in the outback of Australia or in the western desert of Egypt, or whether it's on a boat going to Gaza. These are the real events. And I was recounting it, and a little boy at the Q&A at the end put his hand up and he said, excuse me. I said, yes. He said, did any of that actually happen? And I thought, what a brilliant question. So I went back with my daughters, went through my diaries, and yeah, it all happened and more. And so my daughter said, you need to write a book. And then people were saying, you need to write a book. And one of the ethos, ethics that we have as Muslims is you shouldn't put yourself forward into the limelight. You should be invited. Because if you are thrusting yourself into the limelight, all you're going to get is attention and dunya and this life. But if you're asked and you go for a good reason, and that reason is to educate and to guide to the right path, to righteousness, to goodness, then you get good in this life and the next. And it's much more powerful. So I wrote when I was asked to write. And I think for a memoir, that's important. To me personally, I think that's important. Otherwise, it's just for money. I mean, if you are Ronaldo, all right, fair enough. Everybody wants to know what socks you wear this morning. Okay, he's amazing. Okay, just write it. It doesn't matter. But for the rest of us, what is your why? Yeah. What is your why for writing anything like a memoir?
And when you're asked, do you, I guess from your perspective, did you really think, actually, they've asked me? I guess you did, because you went and you kind of digged around and you went through all your past journals and writings and so forth. So I guess my question is, when you're asked, do you really dig into what I can offer, how I can put something together that will support and I guess improve awareness?
So the difference between an autobiography and a memoir, as far as I understand, is this. Autobiography is a chronological order of events by super famous people, and you just want to know, what did they have for dinner when they were 12, right? Okay, that's fine. A memoir should have a theme. A memoir should have a message. And so by the time I'd been Muslim for a couple of years, I thought, I am starting to see a little bit of a thread here of an average human soul who's just been given a little bit of awareness that they are a soul. And write about that, because my dad gave me an awareness, this isn't it. And then there was faith, there was Christianity, who is God? And then there was the Muslims in Palestine. Why are we here, and how are we grateful, and how are we thanking God in our behavior? And then there was the awakening with Islam. God is one, serve him. Prophet Muhammad is the last prophet, peace be upon him. And so I just really drew a line between those events and went to draw them out.
Okay. So you're able to almost connect the dots of the different themes that have. But I guess for you, it must have been, I imagine this, I should never make assumptions, but I'm going to make one here. It must have been incredibly therapeutic to go through the process for you. And obviously, I guess another reward is to put important narrative out for other people to learn from and digest.
I'm going to say no and yes.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. I didn't need the therapy by that point. I didn't find it in any way like, oh, this is so cathartic,
Mm.
because by the grace of Allah, you have to, at some point, you should be working on losing the need to be understood,
Really?
right?
Really?
And
Okay.
stop, and I had to stop looking at myself. It's not about, at a certain point, you've looked in the mirror enough. Stop navel gazing. So, no, I wanted to draw out other people's stories with me kind of as a narrator going, this is interesting, guys. Look at this over here. And I just happened to be the through line. And once I could do that and distance myself from any thought of it being catharsis and about me, and oh gosh, I feel so much better. Once I could take myself out of the story, then it became something worth recounting.
Okay. And to get to that point where you took yourself out of the story, did you arrive at that point at the start of the process, or did that come in between or at the end of the process?
That was it. That was at the beginning of the process, because I said, I knew that I wanted to speak to people, all of us, who are lost in the very strange version of dunya, of this realm. This realm is weird right now. There's a lot of darkness out there, and there's the light expels the darkness. And so how do we connect away from this sludge and slurry that is dragging us down? We know what's ugly, we know what is dark, and everything happens for a reason, and we may not know that reason, but Allah, God, knows the reason. Let's move towards that understanding.
Yeah. Something that I sourced, I think I read it out in your bio actually, that your acting skills came into play again. So Edinburgh, I think it was a Fringe festival, you performed. So maybe you could expand on how that came about.
Yeah, subhanallah. Sorry, the first version of this book came out 2018, and I woke up one night in January 2019, and I said, it's a play. And I'm like, what was that about? Literally, I woke up and I was speaking, it's a play. And I'm like, it's a play, it's a play. What's a play? What's a play? The book is a play. The book is a play. You've written it in a series of scenes. And very much when you read this book, it is a series of exciting, self-contained, but joined scenes. And so I thought, right. Okay, so how am I going to communicate that? We'll have to write a play. How do I get somebody to write a play with me? And I started asking around, found a brilliant playwright, and he said, I'll write it with you. This is great source material. Where are we going to put it on? This is February 2019, right? Let's put it on at the Edinburgh Fringe in August. You've got to raise £30,000. You've got to hire people, and you've got to write it and rehearse it. Literally, it was such a blessed experience. I wouldn't have walked out onto a stage again unless it was for my director, who likes to stay anonymous, and that's fine, because he does other amazing work in the mainstream. And this is how Muslims have to work, by the way, which is a bit, it gives you a little bit of insight, right? He wants to stay anonymous because he works in the mainstream.
Right.
Alhamdulillah. But anyway, he made it so easy. I said, I can't act anymore. I haven't acted for ages. I just want to talk it like into a microphone, and I might do a little bit of presentation. He said, yeah, that's what we're going to do. Don't worry. That's what we're going to do. Within 3 weeks, he had me playing 19 characters, including Billy Connolly in a hijab. I was doing all kinds of mad accents. We had a mime coach so I could learn how to use my body again. And I was doing a full-on play. Now that is genius. That's amazing.
That's incredible. So you woke up, it hit you, this should be a play. And as soon as you had that feeling, everything went into action. So you had to raise the money, you had to reach out to find a playwright so you could create the play, and then so how did Edinburgh come about? So how did that transpire?
I think it was suggested to me, listen, the best place for a one-woman show is the Edinburgh Fringe. And then this was something beautiful as well. So staying, this is a message to everybody out there, right? Stay true to your morals, ethics, and your message. Do not be deterred. So I'm a Muslim woman going into the Edinburgh Fringe, which is an alcohol-fueled festival of beauty and incredible creativity, but not my natural space these days. Okay. The Gilded Balloon, hi Gilded Balloon peeps, you're amazing, said we love this. I sent them a draft of the play, we'll put it on. And then after I sent them the deposit, this was around April time, I suddenly realized, hang on, I'm going to be talking about Allah and doing bits of the Quran, presenting parts of the Holy Quran with people drinking beer in front of me. Oh my God, I can't do it. I could have done it, but it would be ethically wrong and morally wrong from the viewpoint of my faith. So I had to call them. I prayed, I asked for guidance, and I settled my nafs. If you've got to let this all go and return the money, it's worth it, because you're not going to do something lesser for money. What are you doing it for? Right? You're doing it because of morals and ethics. So I called them. I said, I can't do this. Sorry. You've been amazing. Hope you find somebody else. Why, Lauren? Because of alcohol in the room. Let us call you back. They got back within a day and they said, right, we're going to put a sign outside that says no alcohol in this show. Is that okay? I went, are you kidding me? Are you serious? This is the Edinburgh Fringe. They're like, yes, we know that. And we'll do that. And I'm like, wow, subhanallah. That was a moment when I thought, this is meant to be. Yeah. This is meant to be. And, thank Allah, stick to your reasoning for doing this, and don't negotiate your bottom line morals and ethics for anything.
That is an amazing lesson that definitely it shines out to me like a beacon, because I think it's very easy to, not for everybody actually, some people they've got that faith and that their morals would never be compromised, but I think that's a journey to get to that point, and I think a lot of us may not be at that point. So I love that example. And and subsequently, having researched you and having researched your performance, the reviews, the people coming out of the play, people just loved it. So you particularly, there were lots of non-Islam people that came and saw you. I guess you can speak on that, but they came and they enjoyed it, and potentially something that they hadn't potentially expected that they were going to discover and learn.
Do you know what? I had fun with it, because we decided, we made the kind of artistic decision that I would start in a burqa, completely in black, in the front row, sitting there, and then get up onto the stage as the lighting went down. So there's me. So you've got average festival goers, 99% non-Muslims. I did have a good Muslim contingent, don't get me wrong, but some days it would be, average festival goers from around the world, and who love theatre, and I'd be sitting in the center of the front aisle, dressed in a burqa, and there'd be 3 seats either side of me. No one would come near me, and that was like, I'd have a hard time, kind of like, just don't giggle, because that was very interesting. And actually, it was much more difficult when the Muslims came in, because they'd sit next to you and go, "You're right, how you doing? Hi, salam alaikum, you're right." And I'd be like, "I don't want to speak to you. I'm getting ready for my part." But when people who don't know Muslims came in, they were like, And then I remember that wonderful feeling when I stood up, and they're like, "Oh, it's her."
Yeah, it must be so funny when it happens.
It was fun
and unexpected for people that are in the audience. So will you perform this again, the play? Was it just for Edinburgh, or will you potentially perform at other places?
If Allah wills, I'm contacting people, but I'm waiting for the right time. Okay. I got married 3 years ago and moved to Turkey, and I live in Istanbul. And it's the first time in my life when I can really say that I understand that success is not what Warren Buffett said, how many people love you, it's how many people you love and how much service you can be. So here I am with a husband who works full-time, and I'm behind the scenes. And behind the scenes, thanks be to God, I do lots of other things, but I want to be there for my people and my community.
Yeah, nice. It sounds.
And that may not be jumping on a plane and doing the glamorous things and being Miss Lauren Booth. That may be that's the person who's doing the meal prep and how are you doing, and being a part of this community. And I love that. Alhamdulillah.
So are you very much guided by your faith in terms of what that looks like? So your faith will advise you when it needs to about what's going to be next.
Everything is faith. Everything, because what do I mean when I say that? Islam doesn't have a pope, right? So it's not somebody saying you must do this. It is the absolute inner workings of what time you wake up. You wake up for your first prayer. How you see the world should be in a state of gratitude and with thanking God on your lips. And who can I serve today? That's the first and foremost. And what gratitude can I be? And how can I use the resources that God has given to the best, and the best being helping other people, and also looking after myself spiritually, psychologically, for the next life, because we believe in a next life. So we're paying it forward, way forward. Yeah. And that, yeah, of course, that's a decision-making process. And that, you know what that does? It means that you're not constrained by, I want this money, I want more, I want to get my face should be on a billboard. I should be doing 6 next year. I want to be doing 6 tours and 6 that. And if you look, by the grace of Allah, what I'm doing now, it is so varied and such a beautiful, array of things. But at the core is my home right here, and my husband, and being available for my daughters.
Yeah. No, I love it. Your book. So where's the best place for people to get your book?
So you can find it on Amazon right now. It is called In Search of a Holy Land. It's also available as an ebook on Scribble, Cribl. You can find that there. And you can also, I think we'll probably link below this video, you can have a look at Accidentally Muslim. And the other thing that I'm really enjoying doing is making videos about history. Here in Istanbul, every corner is something incredible. Every stone has a story to tell. So I have a YouTube channel, and that's Lauren Booth Official, and take a look at that as well. And I hope you find it beneficial.
Yeah. So I'm definitely going to put everything that people can access on the show notes, because I've been on your YouTube channel. Wonderful stuff there. And yeah. And
what did you watch on it?
So I watched one of your, so Shazia sent me something, and I watched, it was one of your interviews. I forget who the chap was, but it was an interview that I watched this weekend. So was
it Thinking Muslim?
I think it was. Yeah. Yeah, it was. And I've watched other stuff. I've watched loads of other stuff, which I'm not sure that was all on your channel, but there's loads of different bits and pieces I've watched. So I watched obviously the Edinburgh Fringe stuff. And I watched an interview today where where I referenced the Muslim lady that that she talked about. She talked about not having, about fasting, and about that she fasts because she thinks about people that have nothing, so it's easy for her to fast. So lots of wonderful. There's other stuff that I watched as well. I can't remember it all, but lots of wonderful content. So it's been lovely talking to you. I could literally talk to you for days. So hopefully we can maybe do another one of these when there's something that because I know that you're working on lots of amazing stuff. You mentioned the history series, and you're working on a TV series as well. Is that right?
At the moment, the TV series is in the offing, and it's going to be about history in Muslim Europe. So that's exciting. If Allah wills, I'm ready for that. I also work with a charity called Ikra Turkey, and we support Syrian refugees and also the poor and the needy earthquake victims in Turkey. May Allah bless us and bless the people who are in need. So please help there if you can.
Okay, well, we'll put all the relevant links we'll put on the show notes, so it's easy for people to access you and access any other initiatives they want to lend their support with. So yeah, so that's.
And I want to say a big thank you to you, Paul, for hosting me. It's really nice. It's really great to get to speak to yourself and to be on a platform which allows a kind of wider remit of what is success. Can success be a soul finding itself, or being expanded, or looking out into the universe, or helping others? And I like that your guests that I've listened to come from different walks of life, and you allow for that plurality, not just the materialistic, this is how to hack your life kind of thing, which is a little bit old now, to be honest. I hope we're going post that into becoming good human beings. So thanks for that. I like your content. Keep it up.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's an honor to have you. Yeah, I can listen to you. I can listen to your content, loads to learn, and that's what life's about. And definitely, I want to keep the podcast in that realm where I'm speaking to people from different walks of life that have really important stories to tell, really important lessons that we all can learn from. So, hope if you ever see me going off point, please drop me a line. And I will revert back to type, but hopefully that will never happen. And there is one last question, which is, if you could invite 3 inspirational people to dinner, they can be live or past, who might you invite?
I thought about this question, and it started to get to my nafs. It started to get to my ego, because these questions are kind of tricksy. Because you start thinking, what does everybody want to hear? What would make me seem clever? Should I choose a great writer and then someone from here? And I thought, ooh, I'm not having this. No, I'm not going to have that. There's only one person I'd like to meet, and that is the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. And so I would invite, obviously, my husband, my daughter, Alex, and we'd sit at the feet of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, who was and is a mercy to mankind. I'll give you an example of his character, because then you'll understand, inshallah, God willing, why we'd want to be around him and not listen to anybody else. Because imagine you've got this incredible guest who has insights into the human soul and what comes next, and has a connection to the divine. And then you'd have a second guest who's like, yeah, shush, I only want to hear him, So I wouldn't want to be rude to anyone. I'll give you an example. The Prophet, peace be upon him, had one cloak. He always had a simple life. And one day the cat was on his cloak. His cat was on his cloak when he was going to lead the prayers. It was time to lead the prayer. And instead of waking the cat, he cut part of the arm off and left the cat there. Because why would you disturb a beautiful sleeping animal just for yourself? And then he went on with a shredded cloak. And, when you think of that munificence, when you think of that magnanimity to every living thing, if we express that to people around us and to the animal world, how amazing this experience and how different it would be.
Yeah, no, that's a wonderful analogy. Yeah, wonderful analogy. Lauren, apologies, I've taken up more than your time than I scheduled. So thank you for your grace and allow me to take a little bit of additional time from you. It's been amazing meeting you, listening to you, and learning from you. So thank you so much. And hopefully we can have more conversations in the future. That would be amazing.
I look forward to it, and thanks very much, Paul. Keep doing what you do, and remember, let's have a talk about your performance nerves.
Yes, 100%. And thank you, everybody, for tuning into this episode of My Perfect Failure. We're always looking to grow the show, so please do share this episode far and wide, particularly if you know people that want to really lean into what they're faith could look like and how they can really grow and develop as human beings. And your feedback is most welcome. So keen to hear about the things you like and equally the things you don't like. So you can find me at paul@myperfectfailure.com, or you can find me via the contact page on the website. So take care for now. Bye.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.